AI will take more decisions on the shop floor than humans. Getting people to adopt technology is always an uphill battle. Today, most of the data has a huge lag effect, which makes it no longer actionable data. I firmly believe that eventually the companies which will win will not be companies with better tech but better distribution. If we think that our data is fully proprietary or protected, I think we're living in a fool's paradise compared to so much of happening around the world. We still sit at a very geopolitically safe position. Manufacturers are spending crores of rupees on new plant and machinery. When they're looking at AI, technology, digital, anything, right? They have to understand that digitization, getting on AI is also a journey. It will not happen overnight.
If you were to make a uncomfortable or a unusual prediction about what will happen around AI in manufacturing, maybe in India or globally, what would that be? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Manufacturing Mindset. I'm very glad to introduce you to the show, Mr. Naman Shah, who's the founder and CEO of NowPurchase. Naman, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sarvesh. Thanks for having me here.
Great to have you on board, Naman, on the show. So let's start by having our audience learn more about you. For people who don't know you and about your prior journey starting to the company, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So, I'm born brought up in Calcutta. I did my schooling here. I post that I spent around 7 years outside the country in Singapore and US. I belong to a large joint family. My grandfather had started with a modest machine shop in 1960. So we've been involved in the SME engineering space for a while. Post that I came back to India, I thought that so much of advancement had happened in the consumer space, but not so much in the B2B manufacturing space. And in one of my conversations with my cousin Akash, he mentioned how day-to-day procurement in factories is still so much cumbersome. And that led to the genesis of Now Purchase in 2017. What we do today is very different from what we started off, but that's the genesis. So yeah, that's a quick background about our journey as well as my background.
Super. So I think obviously given from Calcutta Marwari family, entrepreneurship is in your roots. So of course we'll talk a lot about that and still any which ways in the eastern part of the country is a big part of the GDP there. So we'll go deeper into that. So actually, why don't we sort of start with that? And if you can tell us about Now Purchase, and help us also understand why it's not just another B2B marketplace and what's unique about what you're doing with the company.
Sure. So I'll take a few minutes and just talk about how I look at the ecosystem. So if you think about everything physical around us, doesn't matter if it's cars, electronics, it's data centers, it's gonna have metal as a key backbone. The ability to manufacture metals efficiently primarily depends on our ability to either produce them as well as procure the raw materials which go into making them. Both these aspects is what today Now Purchase addresses. So today Now Purchase is a SaaS enabled procurement player where our procurement services is a combination of a managed marketplace, our own scrap recycling centers, as well as our own branded products. On top of it sits our AI platform called Metal Cloud, which helps factories digitize and optimize their production process. Today we service approximately 250 plus factories, of which around 150 of them use our AI platform actively. We are active primarily in West Bengal, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, and soon launching our operations in a larger version in Tamil Nadu. The way we look at the ecosystem is that a lot of activities happen in the ecosystem, but primarily on the end product of metals, the TMTs, the billets, the bars, the pipes, the rounds. But the raw materials which go into making metals is an extremely broken, fragmented supply chain, primarily built out of traders, brokers, commission agents, small vendors, because these are categories like metal scrap, alloys, additives, refactories. And these categories has not changed much in centuries. And even the largest of the largest players, right? So I'll talk about metal scrap as the largest raw material category on earth, which is most fragmented, right? The most fragmented raw material category on earth, because it's a $20 billion category just in India, and the largest player has 2-3 percentage wallet share. If you talk about any other raw material category, you'll typically have someone having 15%, 20% share.
And what's be the reason for this fragmentation?
Sure. So if you look at metal scrap, by nature, it is not something which can be produced, right? It is a generation, it's a byproduct. and it has gone from scrap to becoming a key raw material input because a not it's only that it's most efficient, it's also most green today. There's so much of macro tailwinds around ESG, around scope 3 emissions, around CBAM in Europe, where people want to use scrap. In fact, very recently in North America, they have changed the institute. So it used to be called International Scrap Recycling Institute earlier, ISRI. Now they have changed the name to Recycled Materials Association. They say that scrap should no longer be called scrap because it has a negative connotation to it. It's recycled metal, and that's how value it is. So that's the way the industry is evolving, and I think there's a huge scope ahead of us. Yeah.
So not a lot of work has happened, you're saying, in this space. Historically, the attention has not happened, which is why it's sort of very
Well,
fragmented. And that's the
attention
part it's changing.
attention as well as the fact that this was a lot of times, if I look at a country like India pre GST, this was not a very organized sector. So due to not having an organized sector, it was always having malpractices, corruption, and things like that. Only post GST in the last decade, we are seeing more organizations coming into scrap processing and recycling. Obviously, there's a push by the government in terms of end of life vehicle as well as other benefits they are giving to players in the scrap space. So I would say it's a combination of different factors that this has become remained a sort of unorganized, untapped space for a long time, but that's changing now.
And your value add in this is obviously the sourcing from a diverse number of, procurement that you're doing. And then is the processing on top of that as well, right?
So, firstly, if you think of it right, it initially starts as a matchmaking problem because a scrap with high chrome might be very bad for your factory, but might be great for another guy's factory. Someone needs a density of more than 12 inches, someone wants it lower than 2 inches. So there's a matchmaking problem at the first, which could be due to chemical characteristics or physical characteristics, which we solve both through our managed marketplace as well as scrap processing units. That's number one. Through our scrap processing units, we currently operate two. We're setting up another couple of them. We are able to take various kinds of scrap metal and convert it into desired shape and size as well as sort it as per the right chemistry. So you're no longer buying scrap, you're buying a raw material which comes in defined size and defined chemistry. So we believe that if scrap remains scrap, it'll always be looked at in a very different way. But scrap has gone from being scrap to becoming a raw material is how we look at it once it goes through a processing unit.
Got it. Interesting. And you've added a couple of layers, and we'll obviously talk a lot about the AI layer. There are also these other value-added products that you would now sort of offering. Tell us a little bit about the gap there and what made you do that.
Sure. So, firstly, again, for the viewers, we are trying to supply all the raw materials which go inside the furnace, which includes scrap, iron, alloys, additives, and so on. For some of these alloys and additives, we realize that in India there are only two options. Either you can go to the MNCs and pay a premium, or you can resort to unbranded products from small manufacturers or importers. So we felt that there's an ability to create a value for money brand where we were able to provide similar quality control as an MNC, but at much more competitive prices. And hence we decided to set up our own branded range. Today we have four SKUs, and this branded product range is growing, are one of our fastest growing verticals. It's in fact it grew around more than tripled in the last year compared to the first year it went. So it's been growing at a brisk space, and that's what the game plan there is. And the idea is to build all the materials that a person needs in his furnace, and provide the best in class for it. Whether it needs a managed marketplace or our own scrap recycling or a private label, we are sort of indifferent to it. We want to figure out whatever is the best way to service the customer.
Interesting. And what made you think of the AI sort of layer? Because when you look at these two offerings that we just spoke about, they're very physical, mechanical sort of in nature. There are factories which are doing it versus the AI solution, which we'll talk about in more detail, but completely tangential if you were to think of it from an offering point of view. So what made you think of the product on those lines?
Sure. So we'll take a step back, right? So when Akash and me started the company in 2017, we thought building an e-commerce website, a purchase management platform will cut it. And there was a lot of euphoria around it because e-commerce was still mainstream. When we decided to pivot the business in late 2020, and we had Ankan join us as our CTO as well, we started thinking about what can we do with technology to create a real value add. Because it was clear to us, no one wants to come and order a 20 lakh rupees basket of metals online. But what can we still do with technology which creates a value add? So it started off with exploring various solutions around digitization and IoT in the first couple of years, which acted as a differentiator, acted as a lever to open more doors for us. But in the last 18 months, since we built our AI team, we created a complete AI and computer vision layer on top of it, from which this is just going from a good to have offering or a door opener for us to a almost a new vertical which customers are coming to and today paying for using it. In fact, we have over 120 factories who pay us a fee to use our software today.
Interesting. And when most people think about AI in manufacturing, we are thinking about dashboards, right? If you can help us explain what is exactly that your AI is doing on the shop floor, and also why is it even relevant for this industry? Because most people will think AI is a software, relevant for people in software, but what is the linkage to manufacturing?
Sure. So I'll talk about a couple of things here, right? Firstly, let's take a step back, forget about AI and all for a minute. Every factory is inundated with data. This data is maintained in Excel sheets, WhatsApp groups, ERPs, manual logbooks, and so many places. What we believe at Now Purchase is that if data is not real time, it's not real. So real data has to be real time. But today, most of the data has a huge lag effect, which makes it no longer actionable data. What is a dashboard? You mentioned about a dashboard. Dashboard is some actionable data. And actionable data has to come from real time data, otherwise, it's no longer real and no longer actionable. So, the first thing which Metal Cloud solves is creating a ability to get real time data, either through our own IoT smart boxes, which connects with various devices at the factory, number one. Number two, through HMIs or human machine interfaces, which can be provided on the floor to record data. And number three is the ability for our AI model to work with your existing CCTV feed and pick up any kind of process deviation, any kind of SOP deviations, any kind of other signals which might be only today picked up by a supervisor. So these three get combined to create a first layer of real-time data. And on top of that real-time data, you're able to come up with various kind of insights on what is happening in my factory. Is the process running fine? If you get a rejection, can I do a root cause? Can I do a traceability study on it? If I am able to know which materials are causing a spike in my electricity consumption, which is not, can I do that with it? So there are various use cases. The first thing is to come up with the real-time data layer and then build on top of it. Our AI model almost acts as a 24/7 supervisor who is able to pick up everything in a factory. And if you think of metal manufacturing, it's so many moving pieces. Most metal manufacturers run 24/7. That's the only way business becomes viable. So with so many different moving pieces, 24/7 operations, there's no way you can have your right and the best personnel working through the night. So many of different use cases are sort of being addressed today through our Metal Cloud platform. Yeah.
Interesting. Can you give us a couple of like interesting, outcomes or insights that, your clients have received, where otherwise, for example, they wouldn't have probably gotten those insights, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
Or how it's made their life easier, simpler, cheaper, maybe in terms of costs.
So I'll talk about couple of them. So let's pick up one of them. Where we had a customer. They were initially, so it's a little technical process, but I would just say they were adding a amount of raw material which is more than they should be adding it, and it was never getting picked up because quality was fine. Because you're adding more material, you're making sure you're as per the range, and quality was fine. Post using our system, they realized that the operator was adding approximately a kg extra in every production run. And that kg of that material was approximately say 100 rupees a kg. Now imagine this happening at 20 times a day, 500 times a month, 600 times a year, 6,000 times a year. So 6,000 multiplied by 100 is 6 lakhs. Just a single change, which causes no impact. A small change and 6 lakhs saved. Now, this is a very small example, but what I'm trying to say
Mm.
is that in a business like metal manufacturing, the savings will come from various small things done, which will eventually lead to crores in profits. This is one example. The other example which I have is I remember this customer in Pune, they were using our platform to design their production recipe. So one of the models in the platform helps you design the production recipe and suggests you what's the least cost recipe for manufacturing a metal. And I remember that particular customer, I think, saved around 45 or 50 lakh rupees in the first year of operation. This was like a 50 crore factory. So a
Mm.
50 crore
Mm.
factory, 50 lakhs, that's a 1% profit bump, right? On the AI vision layer, right? We recently got a customer telling us that because your AI vision flagged that impurity removal process is taking longer in my factory, I suddenly realized that there was some issue in my raw materials. And I went and spoke to the raw material vendor because till now it was never getting caught. The impurity removal process, which is called deslagging, was supposed to take, say, X seconds. It was taking more than X seconds, way more than that. But it
Mm.
was still in
Mm.
seconds, so no one was really caring about it.
Interesting.
The system flagged it off as an alert, saying this is way beyond SOP. And then he was able to root cause it to the raw material quality. So there are various interesting things which happen. I'm just
Mm.
sharing two,
Mm.
three on top of my mind. Yeah.
No, interesting. I think some of these are could be quite significant for those companies, right? And typically when you think of manufacturing, most people say, "Chaha, there are people who've been working in these factories for years, so they know in and out." And probably that is true, but yet you still need an objective view of what's happening, and it's that lens that you are bringing through this offering. That helps you cut costs, understand where efficiencies will come from, etc.
Sure. I'll just, always say that there's a lot of discussion whether metallurgy is art, science, whatever it is. I think there's a combination of objectivity as well as intuitive knowledge which people have built through the legacy and the years, which need to be combined. And our platform is able to take their inputs and further imbibe it into our model as well. So the SOP is not built by our platform. We are taking their knowledge,
Hmm. Hmm.
model
Hmm.
our AI to give flagging of deviations or not as per their SOP.
And how easy was it to get this data? Because a lot of it, in terms of the model definition, the quality of the output is also defined by the quality of inputs that have gone in training the data, right? Because, some of these, at least setups, are not as tech oriented for you to get that basic data in the first place. So, how easy was it and how did you solve that problem?
Sure. So hence I said, the first layer is our data layer, right? Where we use IoT, HMIs, cameras to collect data. Because if we don't have the foundation right, we can't create a great building or a great product.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So the foundation is these three different data capture mechanisms, which is sort of building the layer. In addition to that, whenever we are starting off with customers, we are able to today, quickly take months of CCTV feed as well into our system, further customize it for them. So definitely getting people to adopt technology is always an uphill battle. But we have
Hmm.
been doing it for a while now. We have figured out what creates value, built gratification for the customers, which is more instant. So, for example, one of our products is a product where the IoT integrates with your WhatsApp. So you can get information on your WhatsApp from, say, a temperature measuring device in your factory.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
instant gratification. The temperature check happened, it hits your WhatsApp in 60 seconds. Now people get instantly gratified. So people like these things and then sort of loop into more, providing more data or getting part of the platform more. So I think there are various pieces which has gone in for us to figure out how do we build better adoption, because I firmly believe that eventually the companies which will win, I would say 90% of tech companies which will win will not be companies with better tech, but better distribution, right? And better distribution, better adoption. And that is what our focus is as well. Because over a period of time, except say the fundamental, the LLM companies, most of them would be building off it, right? Which would be a combination of either building wrappers on top of it or taking their models, further customizing it, further pruning it. And while all of that will be very important, I think distribution adoption will be the game.
Yes. What you're saying is you're basically the application layer, which is very important ultimately from a client point of view, because the global LLMs might be there, but I need it contextualized to my use case. And that's the part where you bring in and you leverage some of these global LLMs for the underlying infrastructure.
Absolutely, but you also, if you think about it, right, if you think about the curve of technology diffusion, it might be consumers, it might be organized businesses, financial services, media, and possibly infrastructure manufacturing sit at the end of that curve. So we also need to be real that LMs are not going to come and solve it for these guys.
Hmm,
For
hmm,
them,
hmm,
there's so many places to solve for, right from
hmm.
consumers, even if they go to businesses, it's going to be the consulting houses, the investment houses, the banks, the financial firms, and so on. So the diffusion of technology to that layer will happen through a platform or a layer like us. Yeah.
Hmm. And do you have a sort of what's been your experience in this whole debate about Anthropic versus ChatGPT? Also, more recently, there was a whole US Department of Defense controversy around it. As you've been thinking about the kind of LLMs that you're sort of using, what's been your learning or preference for any of these?
So on a personal level, while started off with GPT, still have a lot of usage of that because there's so much data already in GPT because of the various projects in chat, so the context is very high. But today, a lot of the response which comes out from a Claude with respect to, say, if you're crunching in Excel or if you're looking at numbers or if you're looking at a visualization is just far, far superior. Or if you look at an image generation on Gemini, or because we are our companies on Google Suite, if you connect your Google Suite to Gemini, the experience is just multifold, right? And same with Claude Cowork. With respect to the ethical debate which you mentioned about, which was happening with respect to the Pentagon contract, if I'm not
Hmm,
wrong,
hmm, hmm,
I think it's very difficult to say what really happens because we only see what we read in the news.
hmm,
What really
hmm,
happens is beyond because there are a lot of narratives which everyone wants to drive. Whether the narrative is someone stealing your data and giving it to the feds or someone protecting your data. So I don't really know what happens, but let's be real, right? You live in a world with so much of data today. Not only first it went to Google, then it went to the social media companies, now it's going to the AI companies,
hmm,
right? So if we think that our data is fully proprietary or protected, I think we're living in a fool's paradise, right? For the especially the people on the free versions. So and there are already reports that GPT is already piloting ads right on their platform.
hmm,
I think they
hmm,
already started piloting it in the West now, and they plan to pilot it across the world. So
hmm,
they will be building on top of your free data, and India is the DAU farm for people, so that will happen,
hmm,
right? That's
hmm,
not.
hmm, hmm. But for us as a company, when we are using LLMs, we'll use it across LLMs depending upon the kind of capability
From
that we
a
would
from a user
want
point
from
of view,
the.
like for example, our engineering team would be using a lot of Claude, a lot of Cursor. If
Hmm,
I look at
hmm,
our AI team, they are not really using more. They might be using an OpenAI API for certain things, but they are
hmm,
also going and building on top of a lot of open source models available, building and customizing it further. Just because the amount of work which has happened in manufacturing with respect to the large companies is limited.
And is there a source like Forman, which actually has a lot of data around manufacturing? Like, is there a global, I don't know,
Not really.
large
There's no
language
really
model
source.
also that you think needs to be created specifically for manufacturing,
It's
or really too
interesting.
much?
I don't think there is a single source. I'm sure there's someone creating a company for that, but I don't see
Uh,
there's a single source for that.
Hmm. And tell me something, when we, hear about sort of AI in manufacturing, we hear about digital twins, we hear about AI copilots, we hear about autonomous decision making also, humanoid robots inside the factories, etc. There are factories now in China, of course. In terms of heavy manufacturing, right? Let's probably, we can talk about steel or some of the other sectors, right, which are heavy in manufacturing. What is real and what is hype when you think about AI and all the automation that's happening around it?
So I would say that an autonomous factory or a dark factory is definitely possible in steel as well, in metals as well. I don't see any reason it's not possible because if the data layer is strong and the data layer is today giving you a suggestion on your WhatsApp, Nothing stops that data layer to take that suggestion from WhatsApp and integrate it with your furnace to decide when the lid should be closed or opened. Let's say for a simple reason, simple example. And as these equipments also become more configurable, more assembled with a PLC, all these things become much easier. So I think all these things are possible, just that the cost benefit, the accuracy will decide how much will someone do, right? Like it might happen more faster in the US compared to here because say an average labor cost there is say $50,000 a year or $40,000 a year, which is exponentially maybe 10 times of the Indian labor cost. So the ability for someone to, the cost benefit for them is going to pan out very differently than the cost benefit in India. So I think people will look at cost benefit eventually as a business owner. A factory owner will look at his cost benefit. If the cost benefit comes by deploying technology, they'll deploy technology. They're
And
not
this is a very interesting paradox actually for the country also, right? Like when you think of it, on one hand, we want to be advanced on AI, and on the other hand, we have this large labor base that we also need to cater to, right? And how do you sort of balance that tension?
so I think of it this way that if there is ability to remove inefficiencies from Indian manufacturing. So I was speaking to one of our angel investors, and he mentioned that he thinks that there's at least a 30-35% efficiency delta between,
Mm,
say, Indian manufacturing and similar setups in the West or China and other places, right?
mm,
Let's say it even 20-25%. So if we think that AI can cover this 25% delta of efficiency and increase our output, eventually we are talking about more throughput, more output, which means more factories, which means eventually more workforce, right? I think the
mm,
nature of
mm.
workforce is going to definitely change in terms of manual to skilled, skilled, semi-skilled to skilled, and that journey will happen, is already happening, I would say. But in terms of opportunity, I think our ability to grow our manufacturing output is there. We have in a very socially, a very geopolitically favorable position compared to so much of happening around the world. We still sit at a very geopolitically safe position, which gives us better access to export imports. So I would say there's no reason why we should not look at how the entire pie grows so much that everyone in the workforce can still be accommodated.
I agree, and I've been having these discussions with several people now, and of course, we are also leveraging AI for our own internal operation as an investment fund, right? And I think my hypothesis is that the fears of job losses may be overblown. What you do need is a reskilling, upskilling. Like I also need to upskill myself as an investment professional of when I was not using AI to how do I now use AI to make better decisions, right? How do I be more efficient? Things that I was spending time on earlier, can I leverage that to do it? It doesn't mean that there are less number of investments that are going to happen or less funds that are going to happen. Probably you'll end up making more money, which means that you will end up needing more people in the team also. But it's just that the way you'll make those decisions and hopefully the quality of those decisions will change. And it's probably same across at least many sectors. Of course, some are probably more impacted, but some of the sector that, for example, in your case, our case, we're talking about, it's more amplifying rather than being concerned about in terms of job losses.
Sure, sure. Yeah, definitely. I think maybe the entry level job in IT services and people will have to look at manufacturing again as a viable option. A lot of folks, even from mechanical engineering, metallurgy, production engineering, today don't join the manufacturing workforce. They work at a large IT services company. Maybe that shift will definitely, I think, happen.
Hmm. And given that you are in this space, which is the confluence of AI and sort of manufacturing, if you had to think about two fixes that the government could do from a policy point of view to introduce more AI on the shop floor, what do you think we could do? Or if you had to suggest to large manufacturers also who are not yet on this, journey.
Sure. So I'll answer both separately because very
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
stakeholders. If I look at from a government perspective, I think the narrative that AI is important is already being done throughout
Hmm.
India with so many different events, conferences, Digital India, etc. I think the ability for people to adopt AI and give them some more benefits to that. And remember when I was, I think, in Singapore, they had a ability to, so much of IT spends was tax exempt, for example. So a simple, like something like that also creates a huge benefit because it's like a 25% indirect saving now. So you are more forced to deploy technology. And this could be from firms who have gone through a particular credibility check with the government. That could be an ability to do that. So there's just higher adoption which happens.
You
That
mean
is
like a capital subsidy equivalent
capital
sort
subsidy
of a thing
equivalent
in some
for this.
sense?
And yeah, in whatever mechanism, it's just one idea, but it can happen in various, the delivery can be very different
Hmm,
kinds.
hmm, hmm.
Now, if I look at it, from a manufacturer's point of view, so think of it this way, right? Manufacturers are spending crores of rupees on new plant and machinery. When they're spending crores, they know the payback of that crores is going to come after 3, 4, 5 years. Like like say a VMC machine from Japan is probably 5 crores, and they know that payback from their contribution will take maybe 3 to 4 years to come. But they're happy to do that investment of 5 crores. When they're looking at AI, technology, digital, anything, right? They have to understand that digitization, getting on AI is also a journey. It'll not happen overnight. It'll take time to come, but it's a journey where you have to sort of be at it, invest it for a long term, and then the returns are going to be multifold. It'll probably not even take 3, 4 years,
Hmm.
but you have to be there in the journey for 12 to 18 months to start reaping the benefits. And for that, one is the patience, one is the ability to think about mid-term, medium to long term and invest that capital. Not talking about crores of rupees, but that investment mindset, like you have an investment mindset for a capex, a physical machinery. That similar mindset has to be there. Just because you looked at a GPT and GPT costs $20 a month does not mean an
Hmm.
AI for a factory will come
Hmm.
at $20 a month,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
so many moving pieces, so much of contextualization, so much of hardware. The GPT can go wrong, right? It can go, if the error rate is X, you can't look at a similar error rate for the factory. You look at a very low error
And
rate.
as you are selling your AI solution to the clients, people who don't buy it, what is typically the hesitation like for them?
So I would say that there are only people who are today, with respect to AI, like I would say last 12 months, everyone has huge interest. So there are, complex, think of a factory, right? There are multiple decision makers. The production head, quality head, owner one, owner two, a lot of family businesses, father, son, two brothers, or whatever the setup is. So a lot of time decisions are also stuck as internal stakeholders, right? There's always someone who wanting to do it, but sometimes stuck due to internal stakeholders, right? So that is one kind of reason it does not happen. The other is people are not able to immediately able to think about, like what spoke about the long term. They're looking at payback happening in 3 months and things like that, which is not very practical because you need time to, like any physical investment of a
They're
capex.
not thinking of it as an investment, they're thinking of it as an expense, basically.
Correct. And that
Hmm.
is the kind of thing, because even if you today hired a professional, that person is going to help you start showing impact in 3 to 6 months, not before 6 months.
Hmm.
So whether it's a human resource, whether it's a technology platform, whether it's a physical good, you need to give it 6 to 12 months for things to start really creating huge delta.
Hmm. 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 And the people who are sort of, buying it, right? Uh, what do you think is the difference in the attitude? Like where question is coming from is how do you like mass scale the AI bit? Like, are there any learnings from people who are not doing where it helps you scale this faster?
Sure, I think it's eventually just a matter of who is where in the adoption curve. But if I think about people who are adopting it fast, I think there are a few key things which stand out. These are people who already at full production capacities or close to full production capacities, and they're looking at further orders of efficiency to be brought in. That is one nature which we have seen. Second, a lot of them are people who are servicing customers who are demanding them to digitize themselves. They might be serving a Volvo, a Tata, which their customers are pushing them, or their customers are really valuing them when they are saying that I have digitized. So there's also an order of our customer's customer, their influence are also impacting these decisions. That is the second I have seen. Third is, I would say, typically the champion or the individual who is able to really understand how can this transform. where they understand the power of AI. They know that AI, someone who thinks GPT is for writing emails is not going to be our customer, right? But someone who understands that GPT or a LLM can actually replace so much of say research work, or say so much of it can be a brainstorming partner to me, and know about these multiple more use cases. Those kind of folks are sometimes really amazing to work with because they really get it and they really want to implement it across it. I think we're already seeing faster adoption in the last 3 months. And I think this new financial year, which has just started, we believe it will be one of our largest years for the company on the technology front, and we're expecting to see a lot of adoption because people really want to see how can AI impact their life, and there is some sense of, I would say, for lack of a better word, FOMO as well. Yeah.
I can imagine. And tell me, I mean, this is, I'm assuming in China, the usage of AI in manufacturing will be multi-fold compared to where we are today in India. And I'm assuming to a certain extent in the US. Any learnings for us from those geographies, especially with respect to accelerating the usage of AI in manufacturing? Like, what have they done right?
So I can talk to you about anecdotally. So anecdotally, I visited China last around 18 or 20 months ago. That time, not much was happening on the AI front. In general, there was a lot of discussion, but not much had happened on
Hmm,
the AI front in China,
hmm,
the
hmm,
manufacturing space. In
hmm,
the metal manufacturing space, let me be
hmm,
more specific,
hmm, hmm,
because that's
hmm,
where we visited. So
hmm,
I think it's still an early adoption game everywhere. In the
hmm,
US, I have not yet visited. I've spoken to a few people on video calls, and I don't think the situation is much different. So I think the manufacturing space, the AI is still to just come in and make an impact. It seems like very nascent even in the US. Uh,
hmm,
I don't know. I'll be going to China again in May, so I'll see what happens there next time I
hmm.
go. But as of basis my last visit 1.5 years back, not much was happening there as well. Maybe obviously more than India because of all these the higher production capacities and the dark factories you
Hmm.
saw. But I
Hmm.
would not say something which is like they're way ahead or something. It's still like we are all on day zero or
At
day
par
one
basically today.
of
Hmm.
AI
Hmm.
or into
Hmm.
manufacturing game, and hence further it's a further impetus to India to be an early adopter and ride this wave to further compete with economies like China.
Interesting. Tell me, as a founder, I mean, this whole conversation that we've been having around AI is a very different one if we were to go deep dive into the metal manufacturing side of it, right? Or the sourcing side of it, which is the other part of the business that you do, and compared to the some of the other value-added products that you do, right? How do you, as a founder, also navigate as a team, building that team? Different, if you see a tech company culture, will be very different from a steel manufacturing company culture, right? And there's no good or bad. It's just that they operate in their own ways. So, for you as a company and as a founder, how do you bring all of that together?
Sure, sure. So I think firstly the way we think of it, we service one customer. That is the guy who makes metal using a furnace. We help them buy the raw materials which go inside the furnace, and we help them with technology which helps melting those raw materials more efficient. So essentially, it's a simple business, right? It's a metal manufacturer. There's a furnace. Whatever goes inside the material, जो material furnace में जाएगा वो हम देंगे, और जो technology उनको use करना है वो provide करेंगे. So it's not a. It sounds like a complex business, but we look at it as a very simple business because the stakeholders we work with is the same guy who makes metals, right? That stakeholder is not changing irrespective. So that is first. Second, from my personal point of view, we have been able to build a lot of great leaders within the company who are leading these verticals around scrap recycling or branded products or metal cloud, who are people I work very closely with to be able to make sure that we're in the right direction. At the same time, I spend a lot of time visiting customers because when I am visiting customers, we are talking about the customer and their manufacturing process. And when they start talking about the manufacturing process, technology and materials become a default byproduct of it. So I'm never going and saying, oh, I'm here today talking about software or scrap or additives. I'm here to talk about your manufacturing process. and automatically these things become byproducts of it. What is their pain point? And that point starts a journey with these customers to see how we can service these customers at their place. In terms of the cultural aspect which you mentioned, yes, it is a different culture. I think I would say two things here. I think we've been able to pick up good parts of different cultures. So like I would say most of our tech team works from the office for a lot of the days. Still there is a hybrid, they do work from home. If you look at go to a steel company, most of them would always be in office. But even in the other team, there is some hybrid nature. There are people who work from home. So I think we've been able to marry the cultures to some extent. And at the same time, even our teams are not people actually who have come from metals world. So one thing interesting about our company is that say out of 120 people, I think, which we 125 here now, I think less than 7-8% of the people are there who have come from any metal company, or maybe
Oh,
lesser than that
interesting.
even, or maybe lesser than that. But yeah,
Hmm.
maybe I would say 12-13 people at the tops who have come from metal space. The rest are people who have either grown with us, who have joined us as freshers from great engineering schools, MBA schools, one. Second, they're people who have come from the mindset where they want to look at making impact, execution heavy, and these could be people from any industry, right? And they've joined and done well with us. So because the nature of people are also quite open, we did not really have that much of that cultural mismatch which you would have expected if say we would have had say a lot of people from a Tata Steel or Jindal Steel or something like that. Yeah.
Very interesting. And this is one of those things I always have a debate with people where, people see grass is always greener on the other side. So when you've stuck around in an industry for too long, you also have a very cynical view of that industry because you've seen all the not so great things about also. So just having some of the fresh blood also, perhaps who don't have as much exposure, you perhaps look at the industry with a different point of view. You have a fresh way of looking at it rather than, knowing this will not work, but maybe time has changed and this perhaps might work. But I think some of those things also come into play.
No, 100%. I think functional experiences, the exposure is the key, right? Have you done BD? Have you done sales? Have you done operations? Have you done procurement? Whether you were shipping agri commodities or metals does not really matter at the end of the day. Whether you were going and talking to a construction guy to optimize his cement procurement, or you going to talk to a steels guy to optimize scrap procurement, doesn't matter at the end of the day. So I think exposure to functional expertise is crucial along with fresh blood, and industry exposure is important, but I think industry knowledge today is very much accessible on our laptops which we can consume. Practical exposure definitely valuable, so someone with a one couple of years experience is a great spot because their views are still very much open ended, but they have the industry exposure. Like you said, if someone spent a little too much of a time, they tend to have some kind of a bias which they develop, which may not always be healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, I mean, you've of course gone through a fundraise recently and congratulations on that one. But steel sector, when you look at it, I mean, many investors would hesitate because of some structural issues with respect to long working capital cycle or inventory, etc., right? What was your sort of strategy and in terms of, your own story to convince investors for why, now purchase is the great investment opportunity, in the space?
Sure, sure. So, like I said, right, metal is going to remain the physical part, backbone of the world, irrespective of whatever happens in the world. Metals are not going right. You might go from uh, petrol-driven vehicles to electrical vehicles, and you might go from an engine which is more ductile iron, cast iron to an aluminium, but both are still metals, right? So that is the first piece of it. Second piece of it is that our whole model is a combination of commerce with technology, where technology is really playing a role. It's not just a technology for a case of a window dressing, right? It's a real technology deep dive at the factory level. Third is our execution, our domain understanding, where we have been extremely disciplined with unit economics and working capital. In terms of structural part, I would say that we are a relatively very inventory light model. So we are not holding those risks which come with inventory heavy models or the factory kind of models. We are a very low inventory model where we are able to work in a way where our value addition is the procurement service, is the technology, rather than speculating the market. We're not here to speculate the market. We're here to create validation from our procurement service and our technology, and that's how people view us, and that's how investors have viewed us over and time again since from our multiple rounds in the last 5 years. And yeah, that's how we continue to look at our business.
No, clearly you guys are a very, very interesting, investment story, in terms of the hard manufacturing and then the software layer on top of that, right? And the work that you're doing with AI now. And tell me, you mentioned about this, 5+ years of journey and longer, right? You would have gone through lots of ups and downs during this period. You've seen COVID, other things would have come. For some of our audience who are thinking about entrepreneurship in general, or already entrepreneurs and go through that journey, right? How was your experience of navigating some of those challenges, and what made you go through some of those not so good times, during this journey?
So, yes, it's not always, it's never always easy, right? It's like every other day has its own challenge. I think for, we have been fortunate. Akash and me started, we had initially some personal funds, some backing from the family from where we started. Post that, what has been very, something we have been very focused is that we have been extremely persistent. So we have been at it for a while. We decided to pivot the company, I remember, in December 2019. And we all know March 2020 was COVID. We used the COVID period of March to September to actually educate metal manufacturers in and around West Bengal, where we were based out of, on how do they reopen factories. We created videos on how do you build SOPs. We, in fact, were selling COVID essentials on our e-commerce website because government had opened up the ability for e-commerce companies to continue deliveries. So we had an e-commerce website. So we were running deliveries of sanitizers, PP, everything which requires for COVID safety. A lot of our customers, their first order actually was an oximeter or a thermometer or a sanitizer bottle with us. And some of these guys are still customers with us. So we used that journey, and then September 2020, when manufacturing opened, is when we sort of pivoted our entire business, lock, stock, and barrel. And that business, mind you, was doing 4 to 5 crores a month of top line. And we scaled that business over a period of time down to zero, and started from scratch in September 2020. And post that, we have raised 3 rounds of funding. First round was during the hay time, and there's a lot of activity in the thing. The last 2 rounds have been at times where the markets have not been the greatest, right? It's been a difficult time, especially for anyone beyond consumer and AI. And I think we have been fortunate to find the right backers from our existing investor pool like Info Azurias, and now have investor in form of Bajaj Finserv join and lead this new round. Yeah.
So, as a founder, what is it that you think helped you in some of those tougher times, either on the business side or on the funding side? I'm sure some other issues would have also come up. Sometime maybe delivery got really bad, and some customer pulling out, or team issues. Lots of those things keep coming up, right? It's not just one.
So I think
And sometimes it gets very severe also, right? Some are minor problem, but sometimes it gets severe. So, like, what is that founder mindset to navigate these challenges?
I think first is that the risks has to be taken in a startup as an entrepreneur, but these risks need to be calculated risks. These risks need to know, have a stopgap, have a ability to plug the loss if it's not going as per plan. While I'm an eternal optimist, there has to be sort of a case where we sort of plug on a new product or a new experiment if it's not going as per plan. So I would say that's one. Second, I already spoke about persistence. I can't overvalue it. You'll read about that the companies which survive make it, right? Eventually, there's persistence layer, which is helping that
Mm.
journey. Third is building a team which is happy to come to work, which enjoys being here, because people are not just here for working and going back and making some salary or money. They'll spend probably between 50 and 70% of their awake time at office, right? Or at work. So they need to be feeling good about themselves, feel happy about themselves, feel that this is a place they feel valued, belong, they can grow. So a lot of the learnings which we have done, we have had people who have gone through learning programs at an IIM Calcutta. We have had people who have gone through various coaching mentorship programs. We have had people who are who are a diploma and pursuing their undergrad degree while at NowPurchase as a part of our learning development programs as well. Along with the fact that a lot of people have grown right from being a feet on street to becoming a general manager today. So there are people who have grown in this journey, and I think that is, I would say, the single most important. Are you building a team which is wanting to come to work? Are they happy? Are they feeling valued? Are they growing? And I think that's the single most important point. Yeah.
No, super, very interesting lessons, and agree completely on the persistence thing that you mentioned. And on the team, again, have these debates with people, especially as a life coach myself, is that while, yes, you need to pay people what they need to get paid, but they don't only come to work for that. So unless you have an environment where people are growing and they know they like showing up to work, if you don't create that environment, you won't have people stick around. And so you need that consistency for people to be there in any organization for it to sort of scale, which I don't think so everyone does, but I think I'm glad that you are taking that approach, which is quite required. You mentioned about, of course, Calcutta and being from Calcutta. I'm from Calcutta myself. So, and, one of those things which everyone talks about is how Calcutta had a lot of potential, and I would argue that it still has a lot of potential, but you don't see too many new companies at least coming out of Calcutta. What do you think needs to change, for Calcutta to become that startup hub, uh, for India, at least for Eastern India?
Sure, sure. So I would say that firstly, there is a perception problem as well, right? Uh, there is more happening in Calcutta than people know about, right? Uh, there would be more startups. Uh, there are a lot of great companies being built out of Calcutta, which do not get spoken about much. I think you spoke about it, or I was meeting someone who was. I met there was a person from the legal space who was from Calcutta, who was from Bombay, who was from Calcutta but working in Bombay, and he came to meet me recently, and he was telling me that he was surprised to know about companies like Wishcare and Dot and Key. Both are D2C brands which have hit it out of the park, right? And I think if you ask many people in Bangalore, they would not know about them. Both these companies are doing extremely well on top line and bottom line, right? So there is a perception challenge as well, which comes. And the way people build businesses here are differently, so it might not be the traditional go big or go home startup hub, which maybe Bangalore is. I remember initially when IPOs happened, Bangalore did not have any IPOs. Delhi had, right? Or NCR region had. So every ecosystem will have its own nature of companies. Calcutta has built out some of the largest industry houses, from a Century Ply to an Imami, in the last 30, 40 years. A lot of these companies have actually invested back. In fact, a lot of the VC funds do visit Calcutta because a lot of their limited partners are in Calcutta today. Then we have had the new age companies, whether it's a Wow Momos or an Asia, which have built tremendous value, raised funds from a Tiger Global and SIG. So I think the stories are coming up. It is still early days. The stories are still coming up, but there are a lot of stories which will never come up as well. And there will be businesses which will quietly build a 100 crore top line, 10, 15 crore bottom line business in a space of 5 to 10 years. May list on the exchange and draw maybe a couple of thousand crore valuation or not. We don't know. So I think there's a different way to look at the ecosystem. There are great colleges, Jadavpur University, IIT Kharagpur, Xavier's, IIM Calcutta, so many great colleges. We work with most of them, and we are happy to see that a lot of talent wants to come back now because they are finding opportunities. So still the options are limited, but yes, the game is changing, and I think It will keep changing because a lot of good startups are growing. A lot of access is changing because earlier there was a conception that, oh, how will you hire talent in Calcutta? But people are knowing that there's remote work, there's hybrid, people want to be closer to home post COVID. So I don't see those as big challenges. So investments are coming in, businesses are setting up, businesses will grow. And I think soon this narrative will also change with maybe slightly more better PR and branding as well.
I think the Bengal Chamber of Commerce should hire you as a brand ambassador. You've done a great job at pitching the story to invest in Bengal. No, superb. So I'll end with a final question and go back to our discussion on AI. And if you were to make a uncomfortable or a unusual prediction about what will happen around AI in manufacturing, maybe in India or globally, what would that be?
So I think AI will take more decisions on the shop floor than humans.
Hmm.
I would think that that is something which is uncomfortable today,
Hmm.
especially in a labor
Hmm.
intensive, high top down control industry. But I think eventually that will happen. So that's what I would think. So, yeah.
No, agree. It's uncomfortable, but I agree might be inevitable also. So good, good, Naman. Thank you for this. This is superb. I'm glad we did this. Really
Yes, long
appreciate
time
it.
due. Took a while to get this done, but thanks for having me.
No, super. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sarvesh. Thank you.